Hi, Deborah Duncan Owens here. I've decided to start sharing some of my teaching and learning videos that I've created over the years, and I'll be creating some more going into the future. These are just some strategies and ideas that I thought you might find helpful. So enjoy and consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it. Hello, Dr. Deborah Duncan Owens here. The topic today is student-focused differentiated writing instruction in an inclusive environment. In this video, I'll share with you underlying principles of an inclusive classroom environment, best practices for differentiating writing instruction. I'll share with you a sample writing lesson and an idea for how to assess student learning. Also, we'll talk about examples of providing choice and process and scaffolding student learning, as well as an idea for displaying writing in the classroom. In developing an effective inclusive classroom environment, one can look to the works of Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers, who developed the humanistic learning theory. They pioneered the concept of teaching the whole child. Some of the principles of humanistic learning theory include students having control over and assuming responsibility for their education, students being able to make choices and focusing on areas of interest. The focus is on motivation to learn and engagement. This theory also recognizes the importance of students being engaged in self-evaluation as part of the assessment process. I find this approach to teaching and learning to be highly aligned with New York State Education Department's culturally responsive sustaining education framework. The culturally responsive sustaining education framework includes 4 key elements: a welcoming and affirming environment, inclusive curriculum and assessment, high expectations and rigorous instruction, and for teachers, ongoing professional learning and support. Some of the best practices in differentiating writing instruction include providing choice in both process and product, chunking assignments so that students don't become overwhelmed, scaffolding learning accordingly, sharing progress along the way, engaging in self-assessment, and considering time as a means of differentiation, as well as engaging in ongoing formative assessment. There are some non-negotiables when you consider differentiated instruction. For example, the standards and learning outcomes that are taught to all students, active learning, and the IEPs and 504 plans that may be in place for some of your students. A fourth one is honoring the classroom community. That's non-negotiable. I think of every classroom as a beautiful mosaic that includes the teacher and all of the students in the classroom, and how they interact with each other creates an awesome environment for learning. That's non-negotiable. So I recommend teachers take time at the beginning of the school year to develop a strong classroom community that honors each member of that community and recognizes their strengths. Based on the learning standards, I've created learning outcomes for my students. Students will, 1, create an explanatory text that explains how to do something. 2, select an appropriate topic that can be organized into steps. 3, conduct research in the topic and the how-to process, and organize information using a graphic organizer, outline, storyboard, foldable, or index cards. Now, you'll note that I have not indicated the learning outcomes for the rest of the project. I do this because I'm involved in the idea of chunking a lesson so that it's not overwhelming. Sometimes students will become disengaged or unmotivated if they see 10 learning outcomes and an assignment that seems overwhelming to them, and they'll just hesitate and quit working. So I like to keep it in chunks even as I present the project to the students. A vital component of differentiated writing instruction includes opportunities for students to assess themselves and their own work, and to create an opportunity to share their work in some form, which I'll discuss momentarily. So you can simplify this for the students by creating a place where they can jot down some notes. And if they choose to, they can simply use an emoji that indicates how they feel their work is going. So for example, a smiling face could just be, hey, I'm cooking with Crisco. Let me just keep going. The middle face, it's could be better, but I'm working on it. And sort of the sad face emoji indicates not so good and I need help. But it also provides a place where students can jot down their ideas. So these are really important and should belong with the writing project in process at different steps along the way. This becomes a record for the teacher that indicates that, yes, we're co-learners in this. I'm here to help you. I recognize that you may need help. I recognize that you may be a student who really is into the project and doesn't want to be interrupted at this point. This is an example of providing choice in process. So let's say students have completed some research on their topic, and they're at that point when they need to organize that research to prepare to write a draft. And so I like to give them a choice. I use a pick two menu often. In this particular menu, which many of you might recognize from different restaurants where they give you a choice, an appetizer, entree, and maybe a dessert. In this example, my students have the opportunity to select their planning strategy and to select a sharing strategy. So, for example, using this pick two menu, students can create their own graphic organizer. I always encourage students to try to create their own because it puts their mind in that place of where they're going with their project. However, some students are more comfortable with filling in a pre-made graphic organizer, so that's an option. Students can develop an outline or create a storyboard or use those good old-fashioned index cards that I always used as a student. And another one finally is to use a foldable, which I'll share with you momentarily. Along with that, I expect students to share their work in an ongoing manner. So they have choices about that too. They can share their planning strategy with a classmate, share the planning strategy with the teacher. They can share the planning strategy with the entire class if they're like really motivated and proud of their work and they're happy to do that. Or they can just turn in a copy to the teacher for review if they're not quite sure they're going in the right direction. And another one that I think teachers should consider is creating a sort of a video log, a video interview with the teacher. There are many graphic organizers that can be found on the internet. So I would suggest giving students a choice in using one of those. Maybe they have one that's sort of a favorite of theirs, and maybe it makes them feel a little more comfortable to have that sort of structure in place. Another idea for organizing your thoughts prior to writing a draft is to complete a storyboard. This is really a good idea for students who are comfortable drawing the steps of the how-to process. I've done this with very young children where they use the storyboard concept to draw the steps of making chocolate milk, something that's simple. And then there are other ways that they can create the storyboard and add text to it. The idea is that you want them to find a way in which they're comfortable in organizing their thoughts. So providing them with this choice is a good idea for some students. Again, I would never ask all students to do this. I would always give them a choice in how they want to organize their thoughts, but this is definitely a good option for some students. For some students, they're very comfortable just completing a basic outline, like we're encouraged to do in college sometimes. And another option is to provide an opportunity to use index cards, which I'm very familiar with. This was what I was taught to do in school when doing a research paper. And sometimes we forget that it's a very effective tool in organizing information in preparation of writing a draft of a paper. I love foldables, and students often really enjoy sort of that multisensory way of organizing thoughts using different colors of paper and cutting them in different ways. There are websites that will show you how to create foldables, but this is one that should not be neglected by teachers because for some students, this really engages them in the process of organizing their thoughts prior to writing a paper. I want to make a point about neurodivergent students. You really need to give them the opportunity to work in a way that feels comfortable for them. This is an example of a student who didn't want to follow the same patterns as everybody else, but wanted to create a way of organizing thoughts during the writing process in his own way. And so he took a piece of paper and folded it into 4 parts so that he could have part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. The topic of his how-to paper is how to create a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Not maybe something that you're interested in, maybe not many of your students are, but for him, this was something that meant a lot to him and he felt very comfortable with it. So we create the space for these students to do something a little bit differently. I mean, maybe they want to write on a big piece of poster board on the wall. That's okay because it's their process. It's their choice how to organize their thoughts. The end goal is to meet the learning outcomes that you've established for the students. And you've got to allow them to take a different path sometimes in getting there. Earlier, I spoke about the importance of providing choice in how students share their ongoing work as they're completing a project. And I suggested the concept of a video conference. I think this is something that can be a very important tool for some teachers, and it may create a comfort space for some students and also be quite enjoyable. So set up your phone as a camera and just do a short little video as you conference with a student and as they share their work and where they are in their work and how they feel it's going. In an inclusive classroom environment, it's important that students have the ability to work in a manner as part of a classroom community that doesn't single certain students out for needing to be always working in a small group with a teacher. And for students who may need extra help, but they're not quite sure how to ask for it, one technique I think is really helpful is to have in your classroom, prior to students going off to work on their own or with small groups, a way in which they can signal to the teacher that they actually need a little extra help. And this can be done in a way that doesn't attract attention to students or put them in a silo of needing certain things. The point is that in an inclusive classroom, you may have students who have 504 plans or IEPs, but you're also going to have inevitably students who have neither one of those who need extra help. And that help may be similar to what any other student or a student with an IEP needs. We shouldn't keep that from them. They should have the opportunity to work as closely with a teacher as other students at times. I mean, for example, you may have a student who missed a week of school due to illness, and they come back and they're feeling a little lost, right? So they're not quite sure what they don't know or what they missed in class. So we're not going to deny them extra help. Or it may just be a subject area in which a student is feeling less secure. So let's say we're in the middle of our writing project and I've done a mini lesson and the students have been sent on their way. But I give everybody the opportunity to take a clothespin that has their name on it and place it on a board that I have at the front of the room. Just a poster board. One of the poster boards says, "Can you help me? I'm not quite sure what to do." Another one may say, "I only have one quick question." And the other one says, "I'm ready to work on my own." And so if students had that opportunity prior to going off to work, then let's say you have 5 students who put their clips on the "Can you help me? I'm not sure what to do" board. That lets you know that it's probably a pretty good idea if you just have a small group session with those students, maybe to reteach a concept or to just give them some guided practice. And then you may have students, maybe 4, that just put their clip on, "I have a quick question." Well, then it's just you as the teacher making your way to them and answering their questions. They may not need a small group time with the teacher. That's okay. But it gives them an opportunity to ask the question that they need answered so that they can move on in their process. And then you may have students who just want to get down to it. And that's fine. They can put their clip up there that says, I'm ready to go. Let me just do my work." Now, this is very flexible because you may not have a student who says, "I'm ready to work on my own." Maybe they're going to change their mind and maybe they need to move their clip or signal to you that they need extra help. That's fine. But doing it this way signals to your students in your classroom community that I recognize that everybody needs extra help sometimes, and that's okay. And I'm here for you, and I value each one of you, and I see your strengths, and I appreciate the fact that when you need help, you ask for it, because I will give it to you. Some teachers like to wait until a paper is finished or a project is completed before displaying student work. However, I take a different approach. I think it's important that the process is honored as much as the product. And therefore, I developed a system many years ago in working with students in which I used Ziploc bags as sort of a file folder for my students. And these I would have lined up on the wall with the student's name on them. And all of their work goes in it, from their notes on their research, their organizer, however they did that, a copy of their draft, or what I like to call the sloppy copy, the paper that as it goes through different phases of revision and editing. And I keep all of that in the front. I mean, in their Ziploc bags. Now, one of the things I found is really important is that the piece of paper that is facing outward for everyone to see is the one that the student chooses to put in the front for everyone to see. So it often is what they're most proud of. Maybe they created a storyboard to organize their thoughts before writing their draft, and they really like that. So they get to put that in the front. That's what they want to share with their classmates. Or maybe they want to put the revised copy before they completely finalize everything. And then, of course, sometimes students are feeling a little less secure about where they are in the project, and they may choose to simply put a picture in the front or a piece of paper with their name on it because they're not quite ready to reveal their final project. I think this is really important in an inclusive environment where you have students who have various neurodiversities, or perhaps a little less secure in writing. They may be the best math student in your class, but writing is a challenge. It gives them the opportunity to make that choice, to reveal the final project when they feel they're ready to do so. And of course, you as the teacher have scaffolded that process for them. So I think I like that. You can use whatever you want. I like the Ziploc bags because they can be zipped up. They're on the wall. You don't have the issue of file folders with papers falling out of them. It becomes part of the practice and the routine in the classroom.